Hi everyone, welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. Delighted for a trifecta episode. This is the third time I have zoomed into the space of comics creator, author Dan Brereton. Dan, thank you for joining. Thank you for also being a galactic herald there and having the Silver Surfer
Oh,
forefront.
yeah, sure.
I'm glad you're back.
Me too. It's good to be back with you, Jason.
Yeah, always great to talk with you. I believe we were talking the previous time about how much I enjoy your style and love that your art is getting celebrated and continued in creator-owned spaces. And I know that this is a very special halfway to Halloween edition. We're currently filming, recording this on sort of the interregnum of the year between the beginning of the year and Halloween. So delighted to be talking about all things spooky, mystical, and nocturnal as well.
I'm up for it for sure. That's
Yeah,
why I'm here.
yeah,
That's what I live for.
that's right. What draws you to these creative spaces, to sort of the green skull on the shelf there, and the Madame Frankenstein and other such things?
Um, you know, when I was I was getting out of art school, I was working on my first painted book for Eclipse Comics, The Black Terror. And I had started working on it when I was finishing my last semester of art school. And I had worked all through school, all through college. And but I had, those jobs, movie theater, delicatessen, grocery store, delivering furniture in San Francisco, just, those kinds of jobs, part time. Nothing like working full time on a painted comic or any comic. And so
Mm,
there was actual, I guess, for a kid living in an apartment in the late 80s, there was disposable income or what seemed like disposable income. And so I remember I was in a Toys R Us and I was with a friend and I saw this big set, this thing called Dino Riders. And it had like this T Rex with armor and fighting humans, fighting aliens and other dinosaurs with armor on. And this beautiful painting by, I think, uh, Ezra Tucker. He's a illustrator who's known for doing lots of things, but also toy packaging like He-Man and stuff like that. This thing was just
mhm,
knocked me
mhm.
out, and I was like, "Wow, how much is this? $50 for this whole big set." And then it occurred to me, I could afford that. I could buy,
Mhm.
I could buy this, and so I bought it. I took it home, and that was the beginning of the end. And as a few years go by and you're getting to know other comic book creators and making friendships and going to people's houses, and you start to realize that everybody has this like collection that they're growing in their
Mhm.
apartment or wherever. And instead of putting our money away and saving it, this is what we were doing with it. But over the years, over 30 some odd years, things start to accumulate. And one thing that I found is that having these kinds of things around. Well, skulls, I have a lot of skulls. I have a skeleton too. Just can't see it. That stuff
Mhm.
helps for reference because I actually have about three or four skulls on my desk. And if I see one I like that looks realistic, or just has a um, it's realistic, but not like every other skull because they're never alike. Um, Obviously, but I like to draw from them. I like to have them around for reference, and also just because I like them. And my children have been over the years a little frightened, spooked by the skeleton, and who I dress up with a hat and put different clothes on
Mhm.
and stuff. And I explained to my kids, when they're at a certain age, I explained to them. I said, everyone has one inside. You've got one that
Mhm.
you're carrying around. It's you. And sometimes that helps, and sometimes it doesn't help at all. But eventually they get used to it. But having these kinds of things around help my headspace stay where I'm supposed to be. And rather than being a distraction, I think they not only help keep me in this room, um, they make this a place that's fun and full of inspiration. And just, over the years, these kinds of things just accumulate. And I'm trying, and I'm really not trying to, but I've really slowed down on that. And there's a section of my studio that has original art and stuff like that on the walls. And I ran out of wall space for things a long time ago. But I just, that kind of stuff, just, if you're going to be spending as much time in your home working and living, I think it should be a fun place to be. So try and make it fun.
Makes total sense. Absolutely. I was appreciating the Skeletor before we started recording the references there to
Oh,
He-Man, and so that
yeah.
totally tracks. Yeah.
Yeah. I have the Shogun Warriors up on the top shelves with some of the other like kaiju stuff. And some of those Shogun Warriors I've had since I was little. They first came out in the late 70s, I guess. And so yeah, there are some things I've had for many, many, many years. Um, and over the years, I've also divested myself of a lot of it too.
Mhm.
But tchotchkes and things like that are just, I don't know. Feel like it's par for the course. I mean, if you could see my desk layout, where I work, it's art supplies and pumpkins and Swamp Thing and Godzilla and octopuses. You ever seen
Nice,
those like
nice.
illustrations of like the wizard's workshop, the sorcerer's workshop, and he's got
Hmm.
all these books over here, and there's like usually there's like a for some reason a stuffed alligator hanging from the ceiling. I don't know where that started, but a lot of people put that in their illustrations, and that always seemed like the perfect place to hang out. You know, the
Yeah.
and I think a lot of artists we kind of have that sort of thing that we like to put together for our space. And I think it's important for where we work and also for up here too, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Now this is also the 31st anniversary of the Nocturnal series. So curious about kind of the history, the original scope, and what was it like working on this 31 years ago?
31 years ago was the year that the book came out. Um, that's 19, that's it came out in late '94,
Hmm.
and I had come up with this idea. I was on a flight to Scotland for a convention in '92, I think, and I was just trying to think of some. I just like want to do something that's real. I had just been somewhere where I had purchased a whole pile of pulp magazines, and I'd never
Hmm.
seen them before. I'd never seen actual pulp magazines from like the 30s and 40s and 50s, and I bought like this group of them, and I was just kind of just soaking it all in and realizing that I felt kind of a kinship to these creators and these artists and things like that. And so I started thinking about like, it might be fun to do something that was like a pulp fiction and some kind of a character was really way out because there's this character, you had Doc Savage in the Shadow and the Spider. And but there's
Hmm.
this one
Hmm.
character, this one pulp magazine that was called Captain Satan. And this one really captivated me. It had a great cover. The guy kind of looks like a gangster version of Damien Hellstrom, to be honest. Damien Hellstrom with like a Tommy gun, and it wasn't very long lived. I think there were two or three issues. I think I have issue number two. Great cover, and the cover reminded me also of the cover of one of the Black Terror #1 book that I had done for Eclipse, a painted cover that had like the characters in the spotlight with the shadows behind him and bullet holes in the wall and stuff. And there was something very similar about that. So I just really connected to it. And so I was thinking about that kind of stuff when I was on the plane, and I wanted to come up with a really over the pulpy sounding character name. So I came up with Dark Horror. And so I sat on the plane and played in my sketchbook with ideas about who this person was and what he was about. And it's funny because the concept that I came up with is not what I ended up with. Um, but Halloween Girl and the Gun Witch, who are probably two of the major characters in the story now, were not two of the major characters, but they became so. Eve, Evening Horror is Doc Horror's daughter. She's also called Halloween Girl, and she's uh, she's kind of this spooky little kid who lives in a world of monsters and criminals. And the way that she deals with it is by kind of living this sort of every day is Halloween sort of lifestyle. And me see if that's Eve on the cover there.
Hmm.
The pumpkin bag and a stuffed animal, and so she has a plastic pumpkin full of toys that are all possessed by ghosts, and they kind of look out for her and protect her. And then the gun witch is this character here, in case you don't know. He's kind of this
Yeah.
revenant gunfighter, which I call it kind of a gunfighting scarecrow character. And he's sort of her babysitter, and he looks out for her. And then the father, Doc, is kind of pulpy
Hmm.
looking
Hmm.
scientist underworld figure. And there's other characters. There's a character called Polychrome, who's like a ghost girl. And there's Starfish, who's like an amphibious uh, kind of badass who is like the last of her kind. And so I started characters together, and some of these characters have been in my sketchbooks for a really long time. Like Halloween Girl and Gunwitch were in my sketchbooks for a few years, and uh, so were a few other ones. And so I started to put them together, and really I was just trying to come up with a comic book idea that would be something I would want to draw, and something I would want to write, and something I would want to work on, something I would want to read. And and that's where it started. And so it started to just kind of develop from there. And I pitched it around a few places, and eventually ended up at Malibu Comics as part of the creator-owned line Bravura. Some of the other people who were in the Bravura group were Howard Chaykin, Jim Starlin, Walt Simonson, Gil Kane. I mean, these big heavy hitters. I still I still feel weird that I was in that group, but they all assured me it was fine. Um, but
You're in the club.
I don't know. I mean, but we put this thing together, and it was really fun to do. It's just amazing to be a part of it. And I remember thinking, wow. So I came up with this idea, I pitched it, and I had done stuff before, but it was always with a writer. Like previous to that, I did Legend of the World's Finest with Walt Simonson, and I had been talking with the editor Mike Carlin after having done the Psycho with Jim Hudnall. It was a creator-owned book we did. He said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I'd like to do Batman." And Mike said, "Well, if you want to do Batman with me, it's got to be Legends. It's got to be World's Finest. You know, it's got to have Superman in it," because Mike was the Superman group editor. And I said, "Yeah, that's fine. That could be fun. You know, let's." And I wasn't really as obviously, I mean, not as big of a Superman fan as I was Batman. Um, Not every comic book artist or creator is going to tell you that, but probably quite a few would. But I immersed myself in both worlds, and I became not only sort of I never became an expert on Superman, but I really came to appreciate the character, and have a lot of love for Superman. And I realized that my touchstone was George Reeves and the '50s TV show, because I feel like he plays the best bemused alien, on Earth amongst humans that I've ever seen. And just something about him. He was so um, laid back and kind of chill as Superman. But that was my first, and that was also my first Superman exposure. I had before I'd ever read the comics, or you know, before there was Christopher Reeve was doing the movies. So I kind of used that, and had done that, and had been asked, "What do Walter was like, "What do you want to draw?" Well, I want to kind of play to your strengths, and that was really great. So I threw some characters out there. I said, "We put Man Bat in the story." He goes, "Yeah, sure, we can put Man Bat in there." It's like, okay,
Mhm.
cool. Can we put Silver Banshee in there? Oh, I like Silver Banshee. Yeah, that's sex and death. Yeah, let's put her in there. So that was great. But when it came time to me putting my best foot forward as a writer illustrator, because I knew that's what I wanted to do, I just had that really strong urge. Um, this was what I didn't come up with it. It just sort of came out of all these different associations and influences and inspirations, and eventually ended up at Bravura, 6 issues. Bravura, Malibu tanked, and was purchased by Marvel just at the time when I was doing the last issue. So I just got that last issue out, and then Marvel put the kibosh on all the creator-owned stuff, and then they put the kibosh on Malibu completely, which was kind of sad. But
Yeah.
these things happen, and I moved on, and I did other things with DC for the next decade in the '90s. I went over to Dark Horse and we did the Witching Hour one shot, which was originally a 3-part Dark Horse Presents uh, serialized story. It was then expanded and then collected as a one shot, and that was really cool to do. And then I ended up going over and doing some stuff with Oni Press when they first came up, and there were some people from Dark Horse that went over there. You had Bob Schreck and then Jamie Rich, and I was working with them, and we did the Dark Forever miniseries in tandem with the Outskirts of Doom Gunwitch miniseries. So they were both bi-monthly. So for 6 months, you had one or the other coming out, which is really great. And then I actually wrote the Gunwitch book, and Ted Nafee, who was relatively new at the time, did the pencils and inks, and boy, he did a great job. He's so good. So that was super fun. And then things kind of, by that time you're into the early 2000s, and things are kind of slowing down a little bit with painted art. I'm doing stuff here and there. I ended up doing a graphic novel for Disney Italia called The Last Battle, La Ultima Battaglia. And that was kind of cool to do, which completely out of my comfort zone in some ways, but then completely in it because it's basically guys with swords fighting each other. So that's fine. That was super fun to do. And just kind of going around, but always wanted to keep Nocturnals going somehow. So there had been this span of time where I hadn't done a Nocturnals book. Oni put out a one shot called Troll Bridge, which was like a Halloween special that I worked with a bunch of different artists on. I think that was in 2000 or 2001. And then it wasn't until, I hope I'm not getting the timeline wrong here, but there were some collections. There were collections of the Nocturnals material during from say like 2001 or two all the way through until 2014 or so, 2014, 2015. And then when we were at the 20-year mark, I put out an art book called Nocturnal Legend, which was supposed to be an Art of Nocturnals book, but actually came out as a kind of introspective rather than a retrospective because it was full of art, but I really felt weird about writing about the Nocturnals at that point in time. I still was wanting to put more story out there. And so I took the opportunity. This book's 176 pages. It's 9 by 12 hardcover. All the text in there, and there's a lot of text in there along with the art, is all in the voices of the characters. None of it's me. None of it's me pontificating. None of it's me talking about, back in the day. None of that. It's just the Nocturnals. It's diary entries, interviews, letters, journals, transcripts of recorded conversations, ephemeral type of stuff, epistolary type of stuff. And that was so much fun. That was so much fun to do for me. And I hope that people who were fans enjoyed doing that. I also forgot that there was a role-playing game book for a superhero role-playing game in 2003 called Mutants and Masterminds. And we did a whole hardcover book called Nocturnals Midnight Companion, which was basically about them and their world, the world of the Nocturnals and the characters and the lore and kind of surrounding other kind of tertiary and secondary characters and villains. So you could play the Nocturnals in the context of the Mutants and Masterminds role-playing game. And that actually won an Emmy award, a gaming industry award, which was really cool. And that was something that I'd hoped that people who weren't just gaming people would gravitate toward as being a kind of wow, this is like a guide to the Nocturnals, a sort of a Nocturnals Bible. And that's a tough thing to market. So I don't think as many Nocturnals fans caught it as I would have hoped, but it did sell out. And like I said, it won an award, which was really cool. And then by the time 2014 came around, we're at like I said, we're at the 20th anniversary. We put out Nocturnals Legend, and then I was kind of in this weird space where I was supposed to be doing this big job for a small publisher, and who had been kind of wooing me and really, really aggressively wooing me to do this book based on some like a universe of characters that he
Mm-hmm.
created. And I was like, okay, I don't know if I want to work for another crazy rich guy. So I I thought, well, because sometimes you get hired to do these books, these companies that will have like all this money, and they're hiring you to do stuff, and it's not going to last because they're not going to be around that long because they have all this money and they're burning it like crazy, and you can see what they're doing, and you know that it's temporary. Um, there was one publisher in the '90s that I worked with doing covers, and I don't want to say their name because they were really nice to work with, but they burned out, and that happens. And I thought, well, at the time I didn't really have anything going, and so I took the job. And then as soon as I said yes to it, like two or three other things came at me, and one of them, the weird thing was just before that. I know I'm jumping around here. Just before that, there's a point. I promise.
Yeah, I got you. I
the
got you.
guy had the guy had said to me, because I said, okay, now that I've got this job I'm doing for you, it looks like I have a job with Bongo and Treehouse of Horror coming up next year. It looks like I have this other thing with Made Fire I'm going to do, um, and I think there might have been one other thing. And then I said, but so can we postpone this book a little bit or something, and just like a couple of months? And he was sure, fine. And then all of a sudden, uh, he came at me like a week before Christmas and said, "No, I don't want to wait, and it's off. We're not doing it. I can't wait. I've waited
Yeah.
long enough." And I was like, "Okay, great." Well, this was kind of a big job that I was going to start, and I wanted to get the smaller stuff out of the way. And this person just was like not going for it, and it was really it was crushing because that was 6 months to a year, probably close to a year's worth of work that I had set up in advance, and then I had nothing. And I had these other things that I was supposed to do, but they were kind of they weren't as set in stone, and that was fine. But I went on Kickstarter, not Kickstarter, sorry, I went on Facebook, and I said, hey, wow, this thing happened to me, and it really sucked. And I didn't name names or anything like that. But the point of why I came on Facebook to vent was to say maybe instead of um, you know hiring myself out to work on someone else's vision, maybe I should be focusing more on mine again. And I wasn't exactly sure what I meant when I said that. It could have been anything. Of course, I was thinking about Nocturals, but a couple of people picked up on what I was thinking, and they said, "Yeah, you should kickstart Nocturnals." And I was like, "Kickstart Nocturnal?" I wasn't even saying anything about Kickstarter, and that just stuck in my head. That worked its way like a worm in my brain. Kickstarter Nocturnals, and a lot of people were like, "Yeah, that would be cool." And then some other people mentioned it. Some friends mentioned it, and I had done a Kickstarter for an art book. My first art book, first Kickstarter is called Enchantress, and I had done one, and we had decided not to do Legend as a Kickstarter. We just put it out there, and now I think we should have done it as a Kickstarter, but we didn't. So we did. So we launched. Steve Morger is Big Wow, who also is co-owner of the Lake Como Comic Art Festival in Lake Como, Italy. He used to do a show called Big Wow Comic Fest in San Jose, which is a great show. Well, he and I had been publishing and co-publishing on and off for years. So he's like, well, let's do a Kickstarter for a Nocturnals graphic novel. So we put that together in, I guess, 2014 or 2015. We kickstarted that, and it took a few years to finish it because it started out being I think I want to say a 64-page graphic novel. But then as I kept going on it, I realized that I needed to add more pages to it. And I'd already said we were going to add more pages as a kind of a stretch goal. So we were going to we were going to push it up to 80 pages, which is great because you can expand the story. And, it's always good to do that, I think, sometimes. It's one of those things where, like, sometimes it's good to keep it raw and lean and spare, and other times you need that space. And I think, especially since it had been so long since I'd done something, I needed the space. So I could have told the story, a certain story or a certain version of the story one way, able to go and expand it more because we expanded it to 95 pages, and it took a little longer to finish it, but it was where it needed to be. And then I sat with my friend Henry Gilroy, who's an animation writer. Um, He's worked on Planet Hulk, Ultimate Spider-Man, Star Wars Rebels, Clone Wars, Bionicles, you name it. Henry's been on it and understands story excruciatingly well to to the degree of, you really have to be ready to hear the feedback. And he was gracious enough to sit with me when I had 95 pages painted. And I sat with him one afternoon and I told him the whole story. We went through the pages. I told him the story. And he sat through and he listened and he made comments. And I wrote little comments and notes based on our conversation on post-it notes and put them on the pages so that when I was going to do the final dialogue, I'd have that stuff there. And it was really great. It was like having a editor who was just, I've never had like an editorial process where I sat across from the editor and went through the entire book. That never happened in 2 decades or more of doing comics. It was amazing. And we discovered that there needed to be one page, a little scene that was added into the story to kind of help bridge some gaps, and not gaps, but just kind of strengthen and reinforce the story, and not the plot, but the story. And so I added one more page, 96 pages, and that was Nocturnals, Sinister Path. And that was the book that came out in, I think, 2017. I get it mixed up, but I'm pretty sure. Let me take a look here. This is a hardcover version. This was the Kickstarter hardcover. We did a soft cover
Very
too.
nice.
Also, we offered that through Diamond on our own shingle. So not a lot of people saw it. It wasn't like, we were in the previous catalog with a big, you know what I mean? We're just one page.
Yeah.
We weren't even a page. But I want to see here. When did it come out? My guess is 2017. But that was the time that we put the book out, and it was exciting to have it out. And I remember being in San Diego and selling the book because we fulfilled the Kickstarters, but then we also had sold through Diamond, and then we were selling through it shows and things like that. So the big push was in San Diego, and I had the banner and everything. And so funny because after all that time of working on it and people saying, yeah, you should do it, people would come up and I would say, yeah, so here's the new book. And invariably, the next question would be, what are you working on now?
Right.
And I heard that was one of those things where you kind of expect to hear that question. That's just a kind of a normal question. What are you working on now? And, but this was the first year where when someone asked me that question, I stopped and I said, hey, you know what? This is out now. This is what I've been working on. This is what I've been sweating over for how many years? Here it all is. Who
Mm-hmm.
cares what's next? This is here now. And I couldn't, and that's when I started to think, man, that's such a weird question to ask someone when you put a new book in front of them. They haven't even read it yet. What are you working on now? I'm working on selling this book.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like,
So,
here's my new baby. Well, when's the next one on the way? Yeah.
like when you're in the hospital. So for when your next baby comes, let's focus on this baby
Mhm.
first. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of like when you're a kid and you get a new toy and then you look on the back of the box and there's all these other toys advertised and all you care about is getting all those. Maybe that's just the mentality. I don't know. But when you spend so much time on something, you really just hope that someone will read it and enjoy it and maybe come back and say, hey, I liked it, or ask you a question about something. That feedback is where you have that connection. And
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
don't know if readers know that there are creators out there that want to hear the feedback. I mean, I used to read all those letters pages when I was a kid, and
Yeah.
people writing to Marvel and DC or wherever. And even Nocturnals, the first Nocturnals miniseries, Black Planet, had a letters page. And people said, are you going to call it Nocturnal Emissions? And I said, no, I'm not going to call it Nocturnal Emissions. But it turns out there's no really good letters page title because what I ended up with was shots in the dark or something like that, which
Mhm.
just is bad. Anyway, so anyway, I'm pointing that out because someone else is going to point it out. Well, it has pointed it out to me. But I here we are, 31 years later, and it's amazing to me because I'm still just as invested in the characters and excited about telling new stories as I ever have been. I mean, I
It's
think I
awesome.
created something that I could sink my teeth into for a really long time. It has all it's like this cauldron of full a stew of all these things: horror, crime, monsters, kind of a superhero aesthetic, noir, Halloween. The things that I find interesting, the things that kind of push me through are in there, and for the most part, and it's I'm also more than anything else interested to know what's going to happen to them, what's next for them, where are they headed, Eve is this young kid, what's going on with her, and she's become the focus of the stories as the years have gone by. I find that I relate to all the characters. A writer will tell you, oh, all the characters are me, and I guess
Mhm.
that's true to a certain extent. That makes perfect sense to me. But she's the kid I kind of wish that I had been to a certain degree, because she's kind of fearless and takes everything in stride, doesn't usually get scared, and has a great attitude about things throughout, no matter what happens. And I there's all these qualities in her that I admire, and not to say that I don't admire qualities in the other characters, but I think some of the characters are admirable in some ways, but they're also deeply flawed, and I think that's important too. Like Starfish is this character who does not like human beings. She doesn't like people. She would rather be in the ocean. If she's not fighting other people, she'd rather just be in the ocean, playing with sea monsters. Get that. Doc Horror is always trying to make sure that his child is safe. It's part of the reason that he does what he does, is to keep the monsters from the door. Um, and so there's plenty to occupy my creative impulses with Nocturnals. And so it's being that it's 31st anniversary, and October 31st is Halloween. It's one of my editor, Patrick Thorpe at Dark Horse, said, "Oh, it's kind of a Halloween anniversary." I was like, "Oh yeah, that's good. I like that. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
exactly what it is." So right now on Kickstarter, my art book for this year is called Nocturnals 31, and it's got new artwork. It has process galleries where among other things, there's 4 new covers that I've just done, Nocturnals covers, that I'm going to explain what that's about in a second, and some other pieces that I'm going to do process galleries for. So on my Patreon, when I'm working, I take shots of stuff as I'm going along, work in progress shots, and then you can see kind of from start to finish. And those process galleries are a big part of what I do on Patreon. And so I'm going to be transferring that idea to the book. There'll be a section of that stuff. There'll be a section of page splash pages and interior pages that I'm scanning and rescanning, so you can see the whole thing, kind of like the artist edition sort of style. I mean, the book is 9 by 12. It's not huge, which would be really a pain to ship, but you'll be able to kind of see these pages more the way they look when they're painted, without the lettering and the dialogue balloons, all the formatting and things like that, or the little tweaking that happens sometimes. And because I think some of those interior pages are some of my best work, and um, I think it's be really fun to show some of that stuff. So there's a ton of work that I've done that I haven't shown anybody. Uh, that it's going into the book. I'm going and pulling out stuff that was kind of concept and design work and early kind of things that people probably haven't seen before. There's guest artists that I'm pulling some of their work of people who've done renditions of the Nocturnals over the years. I did an anniversary art book that came out. It was Hero Initiative. I did it with Hero Initiative. It was a Nocturnals anniversary art book that came out in 20. Well, it was supposed to come out in 2015 or 2014, but it was late. It came out a couple of years later because we asked artists to participate and donate artwork that was then auctioned off for the Hero Initiative charity, which I'm a huge supporter of. And then they put this book out, And so a lot of the stuff is in there, but then there's still other things that I haven't shown. There's things that come since, or things I couldn't find before, sketches and drawings and all these kind of things, and piece and paintings and stuff. So it's I'm really looking forward to seeing this book. And also, I'm going to be in there this time. This time, it's not the Nocturnals talking; it's me. And not that there's a lot of me talking, but you're going to, I'm kind of going to take you through the process of painting a cover or doing a page, and that's where I come in. So I'm really excited about that, and it's going to be cool. And there's of course a an art portfolio that comes along with it that has all the covers for the Sinister Path project, uh, the wraparound cover art, which was done for the hardcover edition,
Mm-hmm.
the trade paperback cover art, and this is the next thing, the Nocturnal Sinister Path book, which did not get a wide circulation when it came out in 2017, is going to be released to a whole new readership by through Dark Horse Comics. So Dark Horse Comics is going to put out Sinister Path this fall as a 4-issue miniseries, which is interesting because it was never meant to be 4 floppies. It was always meant to be a graphic novel. But we decided that would be kind of cool to put it out there over span of 4 months, September through December, as a miniseries. And because it wasn't that easy, well, it wasn't that it wasn't easy. It was just that you had to find the places where the breaks seemed natural in the story to divide it into 4 pieces. And one of the things I noticed was that when you divide it into 4 pieces, there were a couple of natural breaks, and there were some points where it was not natural. And so I thought, okay, what I need to do is I need to insert new material so that these are more smooth. In other words, so that every issue has a splash page. So there's a new
Mm-hmm.
splash page for every issue, and that means 4 new pages of story. And then there are 2 more. Then there are 2 more splash pages that are ends of issue things. So that's 2 more pages of story, and then there's 2 pages of just story that are going to be in a couple different scenes. So there's 8 new pages of story with dialogue that I'm adding to the miniseries. So it's kind of an extended edition. Um, and they're not billing it as an extended edition or a director's cut. It's just Sinister Path. But that's what it is. It's like an updated version with new art and new story, and I'm super excited about that. And I had to carve out a chunk of time for my schedule to do that, and but it was totally worth it. And I if I needed to do more, I would have done more. I would have done more pages, but 8 was perfect. 2 per issue, and so I did 4 new covers for that, and the portfolio has the 4 new covers. In fact, by the time the portfolio starts shipping in the fall, I don't think all 4 of those books will have been out, because the last book comes out in December. And so there's a very good chance that people are going to see the artwork before they see it on the book, including some of the interior artwork that's going to be in the series will be shown just as is, just as artwork. Some of the pages, not all of them, but like quite a few of those pages will be in the book too. So it kind of goes hand in hand with this mini series, and I'm really excited about that. That to me seemed like a really good reason to celebrate the 31st anniversary of Nocturnals rather than the 30th, if that makes sense.
Total sense. It makes total sense. Yeah. What's it like to have the vision here all these years later and to get to sort of revisit and add those pieces in?
It was really cool to go back into the story and pick up some things that I hadn't quite remembered, because they're always on my mind. I'm always thinking about what's going on with them and where they've been, where they're going. I mean, I'm two stories ahead right now. I have a graphic novel that I've been it's completely penciled, another 96-page graphic novel. It's called Darkly, and I'm painting that, and I'm not as far into the finishing of the pages I would like to be. I think I'm 20 pages in to finished pages. It's just hard because there's no one's paying for it. It's all under my own steam. So it's when I can find the time to kind of put in on it. And
Mm.
well, I'm working on that. That's a follow up to Sinister Path, and then there's a follow up to Darkly to kind of make it all a trilogy, and that one's called Abyss. It's a working title. And that's a trilogy that kind of wraps up a certain storyline that has to do with Eve meeting or finding out about her mother, which is a pretty crazy storyline. There's a lot of stuff that happens, especially in Darkly. Darkly is monsters, monsters, monsters. It's just nonstop. It's one monster after another in that book. It was so fun to draw. I can't wait to finish it. But anyway, that all takes place on Halloween night. But to be able to go back to this book and to Sinister Path and kind of read through and say, okay, well, I what I need here is kind of this shot, and what would be great is to set up this scene that's coming up is this, and to be able to add those splash pages in there, to make it feel like a real comic. But not only splash pages at the end where you have like a cliffhanger situation, made me feel kind of rejuvenated because I haven't drawn the interior of a comic in a while. I mean, as far as doing my own stuff, that's one thing, but to be able to do, I haven't done like a kind of like a floppy sort of situation for a long time, and to be able to kind of play around with that and have the room to say, well, like if it was a 22-page book or a 28-page book, I would only have so much room. I have to really choose my battles about what I'm going to put in here, and if I have to tell the story, so I may not have room to do a full page spread or a full a splash page or a double page spread. I won't have the room to do that. I have a story to tell, and to be able to decide, well, I can do that here. I can
Mm-hmm.
add these splash pages in. Was just joyful to do that. It's why I do this. It's the purest form of why I do comics, is because it's just so fun, and because I love telling stories, and I want the reader to get sucked in, to learn something about to learn more about the characters and to feel like they really are in that world, and you can easily get that with a good writer and artist team who are working on a monthly title where it's one after another. It goes on for however long it goes, whether 6, 10, 20 issues. But I don't have that because of the way I work and because people want to see me do painted work. It takes longer. Even though with Darkly, I've come up with sort of a way to go a little faster because I'm putting more ink line in with the painting, which speeds things up a little bit. This book, Sinister Path, didn't have that. It was pure watercolor gouache with a brush, no ink lines, nothing like that. And that's how I did these 8 pages too. I kind of kept them in the same style. But Darkly will be a little bit different. It still looks like me and everything, but um, I'm not cutting corners or anything like that. It's just a different way of working that happens to take a little less time, which is
Mm-hmm.
important to be able to finish it. But just to be doing comics and telling stories is just really what makes me happy. I mean, I love doing pinups and covers and things like that. I mean, it's kind of it's a free, joyful thing in and of itself. But there's work involved in comic book storytelling that's not in pinups and covers and commissions. It's just not in there. There's a whole other level, which is why we enjoy reading comics, which is why I can do 10 art books in 10 years and they wouldn't be as exciting to people as if I was doing 10 comics or 10 graphic novels in 10 years. I mean, both of us, I think the answer from everyone would be, I'd rather see Dan do 10 graphic novels in 10 years. Me too. It's just doing that is tough, because there's just not the business doesn't support that model anymore for a painted artist. And I mean, you don't even see Alex Ross doing a lot of that stuff. And it's painstaking. It's a lot of work. And so when the book comes out and I say, here's my new book, and someone says, what are you working on now? It's like, I want to strangle them. It's like, do you know how long this page here took me to do?
Soak it up. Soak this one up. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, soak it up.
yeah. If I'm a listener and I want to know more, I know I can go to the Kickstarter page. Are there other
Yeah.
places that I can go?
Well, I have a bunch of pages on Facebook. I mean, you type my name into something. There's either my personal page or there's a Nocturnals page. There's an Art of Dan Brereton page. There's a Gunwitch page. Then I have several of the Kickstarter projects have had their own pages. But Instagram, I have Instagram page, and but go to Kickstarter and just under the search, just put Nocturnals, and you'll probably see the banner for Nocturnals 31 pop up. And Dark Horse is going to announce formally announce Sinister Path in the next week or two. So that's a whole other machinery that's going to start up. So yeah, I hope people will go and check it out. It's there's all kinds of bells and whistles. That's what makes the Kickstarter fun. The extras, the prints that I added a signed postcard. Did a nice signed postcard. I actually ordered those and signed them already. So the postcard will come for free, and about 150 of the total run of the postcard will be signed. So you might get a signed postcard. All the copies of Nocturnals 31, the hardcover, all the copies are signed by me. I don't do signed and unsigned anymore. I sign them all.
Nice.
And the portfolio comes with a signed cover sheet. So that one has a signature. And then you can also back for uh, the book plus a portfolio plus a sketch or a watercolor or both. I have right now a kind of halfway to Halloween sort of add-on, which is a remark inside the book. So I'm going to do 30, I'll do 31 remarks inside the book. And then I'm going to do about 20 some odd remarks randomly in the books. So whether you may purchase the remark as an add-on and be assured that you're going to get a little head drawing in your book, or you can just order you can pre-order, reserve it, whatever, through the Kickstarter, and chances are good you'll get a remark for free.
Nice.
So
Very
really,
nice.
also one last thing about that is that last year with Phantom Fatale, I'm doing something I started last year. I'm doing it again this year, which is an art giveaway. So anyone who orders the book and the portfolio in whatever tier has both those items in it, basically, I'm taking two pieces of artwork and hold on a second. I'll go grab them. I'll show them to you. Each of them will be randomly inserted into one portfolio. So two people who order the book and the portfolio on the Kickstarter are going to get this piece of polychrome. It's
Love it.
8 by
Love it.
10. Or you might get Halloween Girl. Sorry, everything's stuck together. Also 8 by 10. These were done specifically for the Kickstarter. There's the Halloween Girl one.
Oh,
So
cool.
I'm just giving them away. I did a similar thing last year. People got really excited about it. I thought it was really fun. Um, when people are supporting your work as backers, I think it's important to show your appreciation and also make it an event and make it worthwhile. And I think that's what I've tried to do. Um, and we try and do things that aren't going to be too crazy, because fulfillment gets to be really fulfillment's the toughest. Fulfillment is the toughest part of the Kickstarters, the logistics of getting everyone's rewards together and making sure everyone gets their stuff. And sometimes there were a couple of times last year, it happens every time, there's, because when you're shipping things overseas, or even when you're not shipping them overseas, there's like one or two people that don't get their stuff. And that means that we got to send it out again. In fact, a fella overseas didn't get his 8 by 10 watercolor that he had backed for. And so I did a second one because the first one was lost somewhere. I don't know where it went. And it just, in fact, I think it might have been the fellow whose box was opened. And so a couple of things weren't
Uh,
in it anymore. So he only got the book, but he didn't get his watercolor. He didn't get his portfolio. That only happened once. And we have, every time we do a Kickstarter, we learn more things. And shipping, packing, all that kind of stuff, we have that down. So out of, I don't know, close to 600 parcels, we only had a problem with like two or three, And again, like I said, if anyone has an issue, we just send them out another one. Because I appreciate everybody's involvement, enthusiasm, and support. So just like I do with
Uh,
my Patreon people. I have a Patreon too, Night Studio. I've had since 2019, and a very great group of people. I try and treat it like it's a community. I share as much of my studio as I can, and that's also a great place to organize my commission list. So if people want a commission from me, I kind of point them over to the Patreon. And what's good about that is that if you don't mind waiting and being on that list, because if you're going to get a commission from me, you're going to be on a wait list anyway. It's an organized wait list where you can pay for the piece you're getting over time, or you can pay
mhm.
all. You can pay for the year up front, and I think you get a discount when you do that. I think pretty substantial discount, or you can do it over time, and that way you can have your commission reserved. And what I've noticed is most of the people who are getting commissions from me that way through the Patreon are coming back every year, with very few people dropping out. And part of that is because they're patrons. I give them as much of, like I said, my studio and my work as I can, so they see things that the rest of the world doesn't see. So I post my artwork on social media so much less than I used to. Part of that's because of Patreon. The other part of it's because of AI.
Mhm. Mhm.
I have seen my work being scraped and reused and things like that. It's not pretty. If you go on my Facebook page, you can see one piece I did where someone redid it with AI, and I was just like, "What? Why would you even do that?" I guess because they
Yeah,
could. Because they could. And
so weird.
were they trying to sell it as their own work? I think they were trying to sell prints of it as their own work. Whatever. Um, so I try not to put up personal stuff or things that haven't been published. I save them for Patreon and the art books. So if you want to
Mhm.
see what I've been working on over the year, the art book is going to be full of it. And that's another great thing about Kickstarter and Patreon is because I am producing new artwork for these projects and these platforms. I always have material for a new book. In fact, I have material for two more books. So I'm going to do a follow up to By the Blade, which was a sword and sorcery themed art book. So I'm going to do a follow up to
Mhm.
that one because I have plenty of art to do that. And then I want to do one that's superhero related. And those are the next two art books that I plan to do. I was actually going to do one of those this year, and then I realized I should do a Nocturnals book. So, and I had plenty of Nocturnals artwork as well. Plus, while I'm doing these Kickstarters, I'm doing new artwork. So I've already done new pieces of art to put into the book. One of them is this G clay that I'm offering through the Kickstarter. Um, it's a big piece. The G clay is 15 by 20, which is roughly the size of the painting, and that's something I finished like after the first week of the Kickstarter. Um, and so the project, not only am I taking stuff I've already done and creating a project out of it, new stuff is also getting done while I'm working on the campaign for the next, well, I think we're 18, 15 days away from the finish line, but it's a 31-day campaign. So I have time to sit and do new things and come up with ideas for things. And it's also, when you're putting a new book together, you really want to make it special. And so a lot of
Mhm.
times I'll say, like with By the Blade, I was like, well, I think if I'm doing a sword and sorcery book, I've never done Fafford and the Grey Mouser. I'm going to do a Fafford and the Grey Mouser painting for this book, or I'm going to do Eowyn and the Nazgul for this book because I've never done that. So I did new pieces for it because I wanted it to be that kind of book, not just oh, I have a bunch of artwork, let's throw it in there. I always try and have a theme. I I put thought into it. It's not just the art of Dan Brereton numbered 4. That's so boring to me. So it's always making books is an opportunity to do something different and unique, and that's another huge part of why I love doing this is to have that book to create something, to put something
Mhm.
out there. You know, it feels good too.
Mhm. Absolutely. Uh, I appreciate the devotion and the attention that you give to it, the care that you have for the supporters, the fans. At some point, I want a Gun Witch action figure. That's somewhere on my list. Like that's a cool character. That's a cool design for a character too.
I know how you feel. There's actually, I'm looking around because I can't remember where I put them, but I have these prototypes for Nocturnals figures that were
Oh,
done
cool.
24 years ago or something like that, by this company that was putting out toys, and they wanted to do the Nocturnals, and so they hired this toy designer who had done a bunch of Marvel stuff. Really talented guy named Steve Kiwis, and Steve sculpted these great figures. He did Gunwitch, he did Halloween Girl, Doc Horror, Polychrome. He did one of the Crim, the sort of the red tentacly demon characters. Um, Even did Eve's little dog Mojo, who only appears in the first issue of Nocturnals #1. And they're so cool.
Definitely.
And what happened was is the company started doing all kinds of crazy. They started out. They made their money off the Matrix toys, and they started doing like Steven
Mhm.
Seagal and Sylvester Stallone, and they kind of leveraged themselves out. And so these toy sculptures were done. Diamond was really interested in, said they were gonna, oh, we could sell the heck out of these, and they were like, great, well, let's do this. And then when it came time to put in the order, they didn't get the order back from Diamond that they had thought they were going to get, or even that they were told they were going to get. Something changed, and I remember sitting with Diamond and the head of the toy company and Diamond's toy guy at this little meeting in San Diego, trying to figure something out, and it was just pathetic because it just wasn't going to happen, and it was so sad to watch it die in the vine like that. And
Yeah.
but these figures are great. They're waiting. They're waiting for their turn to go out to be out there. But yeah, I would like to see that too. I
Yeah,
will show
that,
you
that
one
would
thing I
definitely be
have.
cool.
I will show you one thing I have, which is something that. So a friend of mine who's a game designer named Scott Rogers, who designed the Alien Nostromo game, board game, amongst many others. A couple of years during pandemic, I started getting the bug to do board games. So I was really interested in these board games that were really immersive and had minifigures, all this art and stuff. And I thought, man, that would be fun to do something like that. So he and I were talking about doing like a role playing dungeon crawling thing. And we realized that to be able to really effectively do this, you have to have a lot of minifigures already sculpted, and that's a lot of outlay of cash. And so we thought, why don't we do something smaller, start smaller? So why don't we do a card game that we can add on things to? And so we came up with this Nocturnals game, and which is pretty much done.
Hmm.
And we've been shopping it around for a while. Um, we wanted to do something that was more family friendly, that you could learn how to play in a short amount of time. And it turns out that all these board game guys, they want stuff that's their gamers want things that are more immersive and, to me, harder to learn,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
more challenging and harder. And we're like, oh wow, okay, because we wanted to do something that was like a family board game. So we are going to make some changes because, after doing test plays and things like that, there's always things you can tweak. But we decided
Hmm.
that we really like to do it ourselves. And at some point in time, we also, neither one of us has done a Kickstarter for a board game, which is a totally different thing than doing an art book or a comic. It's a whole other ball game that I'm not familiar with. But one thing that we do have is this guy.
Nice. Very nice.
This is just a
Cool.
resin 3D printed version of a Gunwitch, but he's pretty damn
Nice.
cool. Now, a PVC version
Very.
would have a lot more detail to it, but we did a Halloween Girl and we did a Gunwitch as player markers. And
Mhm.
so when we get this thing off the ground, chances are good you're going to be seeing this guy. So
Cool. Cool.
yeah, I just wish I had a bunch to sell people, because I know that people would like to have them. So yeah,
Someday, right?
one of
Somewhere
these
down the
days.
line.
One of these days. I mean, there's tons of comic book properties and things out there that would be great to see as toys. Um, you know, I get asked that a lot. I get people tell me a lot they would like to see that. Um, it's not up to me really. So I just hope that one of these days somebody decides that that's worthwhile to do. I think if I had been doing a more regular release schedule with Nocturnals, if I was able to do that, if there was some way I was able to do that with a publisher that was committed in that way, we would have had these kinds of things. I mean,
Mhm.
we see that with when you have a creator and a title and a publisher, and they're in tandem with each other. Uh, you know, look look what we can have, and we have got. But to be honest, there was a time where I had to kind of put that aside. I had to, when the action figures come so close, and then they go
Mhm.
away, you have to, or movie deals, same thing. Someone comes on and wants to make a movie, and they're all hot to trot, and then it goes away. That kind of stuff happens all the time. It's been happening for 30 years. I mean,
Oh yeah.
before, when Nocturals #1 had just come out, I had all kinds of people knocking on my door. You know, I got this kid. He just wrote this great movie called Seven. I'll send you the script. I think he'd be great for Nocturnals.
Yeah.
Talking about Andrew
Yeah.
Kevin Walker, who would have been great for who would still be great for Nocturnals. But you see, those
Hmm.
kind of things come and go. People. It's just so you have to get used to it, and then you have to also say, you know what? One thing I know I can control is what I'm doing, and I can put out a comic book, and I can put everything in it that I want to do. Because once you hand it over to a toy company or a movie studio or whatever it is, it's not yours anymore. They can do
Hmm.
whatever they want with Halloween Girl. They can make her 18 and put her in bare midriff clothes, and who knows what they're going to do with these characters. Gunwitch is talking. I don't know. I mean, you hope that they wouldn't do things like that. And if anything ever does come down the road, I mean, hopefully it will be something that I can hold my head up and say, yes, we got what we wanted. I don't think it's impossible, but there are some times when you don't see that happen. And what I can control is this. I can control this and what's in this. The pages of this
Hmm.
book are 100% me, uh, good or bad. They're me, and I have control over it. Which is one of the reasons I think comics are such an amazing medium because there's talk all the time, always for years. The death knell of comics. Comics are dying. Comics are going to go away. The death of comics. They're not going to die or go away. They're too inexpensive to print to go away. Maybe some big corporations or big companies may cut back, but if you notice, they haven't because it's too cheap. For decades, Warner Brothers was probably riding off DC Comics, or at least riding on the, they. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but there was one freelancer years ago, you would know who he was if I told you his name. He said, if you look at everything that DC does in the context of a company trying to lose money, everything they do makes sense. But really, I think what it wasn't so much that, it was that they could do what they wanted because they didn't have the corporation breathing down their neck to turn a
Hmm.
profit, because the characters that they had bought from DC, that was the reason they owned DC, the licensing alone was great, right? So they didn't have to show a profit. But as soon as they killed Superman and they sold what, 1 million copies or whatever it was of the death of Superman, and they showed a profit that year, a big profit, that was when the game changed, because when you're a corporation, you show a profit, you're expected to show a profit and to keep showing a profit. And so the thinking changes and the philosophy changes, and which in some ways is, that's capitalism, I guess, and that's growth, but it's also not why a lot of us are in comics. We didn't get into comics necessarily to become the next Todd McFarlane or Jim Lee. Todd McFarlane got into comics to become Todd McFarlane as he is now. I mean, there's stories about that. There's stories about how he kind of laid out what he wanted to get from this industry, and he got it in spades. And for me, what I wanted to do is what I've been doing, is telling stories. I just wish I could put out more. You know, it would be great to have a publisher come to me and say, "Hey, we want to do like a Nocturnals universe of characters. We want to get other artists to come in and do different titles and things like that." That would be great to be able to do that. That would be, who doesn't want that? But in the
Right.
meantime, I can control this little sector of the universe and this little multiverse that I have going, and I really enjoy doing that. So it's very rewarding in that way. And to have anybody show interest in that and who can relate to it. And there are people who have been fans going way back, people who've named their kids Evening after the character, you know, um, people who come up to me and show me their Gunwitch tattoos, whatever it is. I mean, that's very gratifying. I know there's creators who have so much of that stuff that it's coming out of their ears and they don't even want to see it anymore. I get that. They're highly, highly successful, but I will take, um, a handful of people coming up to me at a show who are diehard fans and be thankful for that if that's all that happens, you know. So
I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. Glad that you're creating, and the invitation is always open. I'm always glad to talk with you.